So in my opinion, if you're off-grid, this is the inverter to buy. I did quite a lot of research myself into which one to get, and all the others seemed like they didn't quite fit my use case. There was something missing, or I had to buy other accessories. This one does it all. So in this video, I'm going to go through why, what, how, pitfalls, setup, all that kind of stuff. Not in detail because I'm no technician, but we'll do a deeper dive and have a look at the SunSync. This is the 8.8 kilowatt inverter. So I've done another video on this, going through the install, or like an overview of the install, how I put it together. I did it myself. It says don't do it yourself, so I wouldn't recommend it. But if you did, it wasn't that bad. Okay, so if you wanted to attempt this, they say don't. You could blow yourself up. You know, it's electricity, so it's dangerous. But of all the inverters, this one was pretty simple. It's my first one, you know, I'm not experienced in this, but really it's not that complicated. There's one box, you've got to put the other bits into it, but there's no separate charge controllers. We'll go through that in a second, but I'm not experienced in multiple inverters, but I have done a lot of research to try and find the right one for us here. Okay, so this is the SunSync 8.8 kilowatt inverter. They do quite a few different inverters. They do an 8.8 kilowatt, a 5.6 kilowatt, I think, and a 3.3 kilowatt, as well as some further up the line, but they get a lot more expensive. We got an 8.8 kilowatt because it's larger than what we had before. I'll go over some of the pitfalls or problems later on, but I don't think this is quite big enough for most people, although 8.8 kilowatts sounds like a lot. I'll go through that in a bit. Why did I end up at this decision, and what do we have here? So what we have, and the reason I was having a hard time finding this, is because we're off-grid, completely off-grid. This has off-grid and it has on-grid capabilities. So if you're on the grid, this works for that as well. But there's some amazing features, which is why this is really good. I know I keep saying it, but this is really good. So we are off-grid. We have a backup diesel generator, which serves the purpose of if any of our other, you know, hydro goes down, our solar goes down, then we can turn that on, and, you know, everything else goes to pot. We can just fill the generator up with diesel and we've got electricity, like we've got a backup. So I needed that. We've got solar and we've got hydro, and we wanted to run both of them at the same time. Like I didn't want to have to switch between solar or hydro. So because we've got those three things, I was looking at other inverters, and it looks like you need inverters, you need charge controllers, you need generator inputs, and suddenly you end up with this wall full of very expensive boxes, which just, I mean, they do stuff. I know they do stuff, but to me, I was like, well, you're plugging that into that, 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 and it was a big maze, a lot of money. It just seemed really complicated to me. I bought this from Bimble Solar, and I spoke to James at Bimble Solar, and he gave me a lot of really good advice, and I explained sort of what I wanted to achieve. And he said, have a look at these guys. And I did have a look, and it's just a do-it-all inverter. Do-it-all inverter. Okay, so what are the features? It has a grid input, which is for if you're connecting to the grid, you know, like a normal, you're using it as a hybrid inverter. It has a load output, which means you connect that to all of your, you know, light switches, your sockets. Well, you connect it directly to a fuse board, actually. So you connect it to your fuse board, and that's where all your power goes. It's got a smart load, which is an aux output, and it's also got your it's actually got 4, but I think it's 2 inputs, but 4 if you want to split your solar into 2 different lines. So it's got 2 separate charge controllers in here, which means you can put 2 DC power inputs in. So you can put a string of solar in, you could put a wind turbine on, you could put hydro on, or any other kind of generation that you want to do. But the really clever thing about this is that all the ports are two-way, and I don't know if the load is two-way, but a lot of the other ports are two-way, which means they're kind of interchangeable. So what we were able to do, and the reason this stuck out in my mind as being a really excellent one, is that you can kind of shuffle things around. We needed to dump load, so if you're using hydro, you have to, when the batteries reach 100%, you have to send the power somewhere else. And that means you have to buy a separate controller. It means you have to run it's just far more complicated. This has a smart it's called aux load, so it has a smart switch in it that you can tell it to send power somewhere at some point during some state of charge, which is excellent for us. But we've managed to find a sort of connection, how do you say this? A way of connecting all the ports that means I've got everything plugged in. I don't have to manually go and switch anything to turn something off or on, and it just all does it inside. So the clever thing with this is that the grid is an input as well as an output. So if you are generating too much power here and you want to sell some back to the grid, the grid port allows you to send power back to the grid to, say, generate some income, or it comes in, which means that we can use the grid port to plug our generator in. So we have our generator in the grid, which means the generator is acting as a national grid, like it's plugged in that way. We have the load plugged into our load, so that's all of our sockets and plugs and things. And then we have the smart port, which is the third port, plugged into our dump load, which means all within one controller, I've got sort of three or four functionalities, all just, and you do this all in software. So I've plugged them all in at the bottom. There's, so here are all the ports underneath. We've got solar and hydro coming in over here. You can see we've got two extra inputs here, but there's not two extra charge ports, that's just two extra inputs. Communications, so they're all your comm lines. Got our Wi-Fi, so there's an app for this, it works as well. And then we've got generator, load, grid. Why this is good is because it's labeled generator, load and grid, but we don't have it that way. What we have is, load is obviously our load, so that seems to be, you can't mess around with that too much. That doesn't have multiple functionalities, it's just, that's where you put your power out. But grid, we have that as our generator, which is a bit confusing because this says generator, and what we have on the generator is the smart dump loading. So we just have it set up so that when the power gets to 98%, it turns on all it does is it turns on a plug. So because this is so great, you just set up, like, let's have a look, aux load here, and it says, so you can change it. So you can change aux load to generator input, microinverter input, which I don't know or don't really use that. I don't know what that does. And then you can just set the settings here. So at 98%, this just turns on, and at 88% it turns off. But what that means is I've run that straight to a plug. And then when the battery is at 98%, anything I have plugged into that dump load turns on, as long as I have it switched on. Like the heater I've got turned on constantly. But it means that I can dump load to anything that I want to dump load. There's no, I need a special dump load heating element that is pretty useless. I can put my heater on it, I could put a dehumidifier on it, I could run workshop tools, I could use dryers, I could use a tumble dryer, like anything, because I've just run that straight to a socket. So it's really flexible. I mean, they say on the advert that this is like the Swiss Army knife of inverters, but for people like us who are off-grid, and who knows, I might change my mind and I might want to do something else with dump loading. I might want to change the inputs to a wind turbine. I might want to change the generator to something different. We're never going to get grid connectivity, but it just means we've got lots of flexibility in this. Okay, so that's what we've got, and that's the functionality of it. I'm not going to go into specs too much because A, it's a bit dull, and B, I don't know them all. I mean, the spec that you want to know is it's 8.8 kilowatts, which is the total output power. So I suppose now might be a good time to go over the pitfalls. What problems do we have here? So you get them in different sizes, and the 8.8 kilowatt refers to its output power. How much can it put through the load? It has its own input specs. I'll probably pop them on the screen. So how much power can it pull in from solar? How much power can it pull in from the secondary input, which for us is hydro? But the 8 point, actually the specs are on the side, aren't they? It's a long list of what looks like very dull numbers. So I don't know. There's the specs. Some of them will be important. I'll pop them up where you can see it. We thought that 8.8 kilowatts would be plenty of power because we've been tracking our electricity on the EcoFlow that we've been using, because it tells you on the screen how many watts everything pulls. So I get a fair idea of what things do. But you know, a kettle can pull about 3 kilowatts. The washing machine can pull about 1 kilowatt. If you've got a heater on, it's about a kilowatt. So I thought 8.8 kilowatts would be plenty, but this one trips out quite a few times. And we had a chap called Mark who's given us a lot of help, and I'll go through the setup in a minute. He's given us a lot of help with this, and he said that sometimes, he said specifically this is with older machinery, but when you turn things on, they can have a very high spike. So the electricity usage might be a 3.6 kilowatt or 3 kilowatt kettle, but sometimes when you turn it on or it hits a critical, like when it's just about to boil, sometimes that can kind of pop much higher. It doesn't show it on the screen, and I haven't seen these spikes in any of the data on the apps or anything, but he said that he's got old machinery and it might be I think he said like a 3 kilowatt table saw, and when you turn it on, it can pump up to 9 kilowatts. So I imagine this is something similar, because this does trip when we have the kettle. If we're running the kettle and a washing machine and we forget we've got a heater on and we boil the kettle, it can trip this, which is a bit frustrating. The good thing is though, when you trip it, it doesn't actually trip the fuses. This has got an internal switch, so it just stops, and then in about 60 seconds it comes back on, so you don't have to come out here at the middle of the night flipping all the fuses, which you wouldn't have to do if you had the fuse box in where you're living, rather than, this is our kind of utility room workshop. So that's a problem. Mark, he gave me a lot of help, and he sent me some pictures of all of his setups, and what he's done, in hindsight I may have done this, although I'm not sure I want to wire multiples in at the minute. This was my first go at this, so I wanted it to be as easy as possible. But he bought the 3.6 kilowatts version, which are far cheaper, smaller in size, and what you can do is you can just stack them together. That might be a really sensible thing to do, because if you've got this it's more money, it's bigger, it's got a bigger capacity, so for me that's the way I wanted to go. And the first installation, the first go, and at that point I didn't know Mark, so I had to do this on my own at that stage. So I didn't want the complexity of adding more than one system, but if you've got two 3.6 kilowatt inverters, it's cheaper, but then you also get 2 inputs per inverter, so that means you get 4 inputs. So if you want to get wind, hydro, and then 2 bundles of solar, you could do that, and then you can just keep stacking them. So if you get 3.6, 3.6, 3.6, or 5.8, or whatever the middle one is, and you stack those, you get more inputs. So it's actually, from that point of view, a better decision to get multiple inverters. For simplicity and for my sake, I wanted to go for this, but we are going to have to at some point get another one of these, and that's a more expensive way to go, because as far as I'm aware, you have to get the 8.8 and another 8.8. You can't just go 8.8 and then add a 3.6 on the side. So that'll then give us 17.6, 17 point, whatever, 8.8 times. Yeah, so that'll give us more power over the two, which is going to be good, because we've got workshop stuff that we'll need to power, and we will have high requirements later on. It's just right now we're tripping it every now and again. So not every time we boil the kettle, but just every couple of days it trips. So that's one of the pitfalls. The other thing perhaps is the setup. So I'll go through the setup now. I'm not going to go through how to set it up, because I have done it with the help of Mark, but I haven't, I'm not willing to offer advice on this, because I'm just not good enough at it. You wouldn't want my advice. But I did a setup on my own to start with, and I think for most people the setup is quite easy. I don't think it's not really easy. Like, I think if you're the kind of person who needs apps that are really nice, clicky, like when you buy a new Apple product and it just scans your face and does it. This is not like that. But if you're able to set up your own internet, your own email inbox with IMAP settings and stuff like that, if you're that level of capable, this is fine. But it's not really complicated. You don't have to code or anything like some of the Victron systems. I think you have to actually code them or pay for the pre-coding. This does have icons and buttons, so let's say it's middle difficulty. If you're competent with computers, perhaps Windows computers, and you know your way around doing some bits in computers, basic stuff, then you'll be all right with this. And even if not, you could probably figure it out. I mean, it's not that bad. But it did take me a few days, and I did have some problems with the generator, which in this instance, if you're wiring it in, you're dealing with high voltages, you don't want to electrocute yourself, and you've got these big chunky cables, and you're like, well, that port doesn't work, and then you have to unwire it all, rewire it all, try another setting, that doesn't work. Was it the port? Was it the setting? Which was why Mark was really helpful. He got in contact with me actually over YouTube, and I'm going to put his company details in the description at the bottom, because he's got, like I said, he installs these, and he also has, I think he said like 4 or 5 of these inverters, and he's got a ton of them. So he installs them, but he also owns them himself. So that means he really does vouch for his product. So if you're in his area, he knows what he's doing. And the problem that we had was that the generator wouldn't charge this. And there was two possible causes, but we don't know which was the cause. One was that the battery temperature was below 10 degrees, and there's a chance that it didn't want to charge for some reason because it was below 10 degrees. Haven't had that problem since, so that may not be the cause. The second one was that if you really deep dive into these and you go into the grid settings, which you then have to unlock, because if you mess about with this and it's connected to an actual grid, you could damage the inverter, you could cause some bigger problems. Whereas I was just dealing with a turned off generator, and I do want to change these because the grid delivers a specific current, thereabouts. So you want to match that, whereas a generator fluctuates, it's a dirty power. So you really want to, you need to change these to match the generator that you've got. And I discovered that somewhere in the Hertz settings, one of the max cutoffs may have been slightly too low. So it took me a week maybe between Mark and I back and forth to try and fix that. And then after changing the setting and after the temperature raising above 10 degrees, it just worked. So I don't know whether that was the solution or whether it was something else that just, who knows. But the setup can be complicated if you run into a problem. That's I suppose what I mean is if everything's, you've got the right generator, and we've got it's a Hyundai generator, so it's not an obscure brand. If you've got everything normal, you might be lucky and it might just work. If you've got stuff like us, and we've got hydro, which is a bit more complicated as far as its inputs go, it might be a bit more complicated for you. So that's the setup. Conclusion on it, I think I've already told you how brilliant it is, how multifunctional it is. I would recommend it, and because they do 3 different sizes and 3 different price points, and then they go up, they get crazy. I think they do like a 50 kilowatt version, which is like £6,000 or something. It's also got a tracking app, which is, okay, that's something I'm going to go with, the app. The app is, it's not the most beautiful app I've ever gone to, but the thing in the app that makes me really happy is it tracks how much money this would have cost you. And as in how much generation have you generated off grid, and how much would that have costed you at current market prices if you were paying for that electricity. And it's so satisfying because we've had this maybe a month, and the total cost of the electricity we've generated would have been about £600. And when you check that every day and it's like 600, 700, 800, 900, you're like, oh, so satisfying to see that we would have had to have paid that much money. I suppose the reason it's that expensive is because we're generating more than we need. So we're running electric heaters all over the place to try and use up the electricity. So, and I've mentioned we may get an electric car to try and put that into the electric car, but it's not accurate as to how much we're using if we were using a regular amount of electricity, but the actual amount we have generated is £600. It also has how many trees would that have been planted, how many tons of coal would that have been. That's quite interesting for me because I can see a comparison as to, what are we generating here and what would that have cost in different types of resources to create. So the app is 7 out of 10, but that bit is 10 out of 10. That bit's really nice. The hydro settings, it's got specific, it's in advanced, and you can turn the wind turbines. So it doesn't say hydro, but hydro and wind turbine are very similar in their type of generation. But you can change all the voltages and amps here for hydro. That was really good initially because we got a lot more power out of our hydro. We were getting up 750, 800 watts after fiddling about with these. But when I thought about it, I did wonder if this probably didn't make the difference. I wonder if there was just some dirt in the lines and that cleared out, and then we got all the extra power through, because I think this just changes the relationship as far as I'm aware. So, but it's handy because if you need to set a specific voltage to amp relationship, you can do it here. So yeah, I have to say, very pleased with this. If you're looking for an off-grid inverter, and the reason I've made this video is because I was looking, it took me quite a long time to stumble on these people, and most inverters seem to be selling to people who have a couple of solar panels on their roof. They're connected to the grid. They want to try and make some money by feeding back the power, if you can even do that now. I'm not sure the feeding tariffs still exist, but for us, for our kind of, if you're inventive and you want to know that you can add a few more different sources of input, DC inputs in the future, if you want to change settings, if you want to be able to be a bit flexible, if you want to stack them together, can't go wrong with these. The other brands aren't as user-friendly as this. They've also got a YouTube channel, which I've watched tons of, by, I don't know if he's the owner of the company or the senior technician or something, but he knows a lot about this and does long, 1 hour long training videos specifically on how to plug a generator in, which didn't help us. We still had to figure that out ourselves. But the resources available to this, you can watch all the professional installer training videos yourself, and like me, you know, I'm just some guy, and that means you can do it yourself even if you're not supposed to. So highly recommend these if you're off grid. And that's probably going to be the last video we've done of this, because I think I've done 3 videos on this inverter, or the power system here. So for now we're going to leave this. I'm going to stop banging on about how good this SunSync inverter is. But yeah, there we go. If you like this kind of content, come join us the next one. It's likely to be our attempt to beat Starlink's internet with our own 4G system, SIM card, so that's going to be fun. Or maybe it'll be soundproofing the hydro, because that's getting quite loud now. Come join us in that one. Be nice to see you there. We'll see you then.